have never played Super Mario RPG. It was on my ever-increasing list of mainstay Nintendo games that everyone loves, but I still haven't played because I am young and didn't get the opportunity to play a lot of these as they were coming out. A list that I am actively trying to chip away at. Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars is a game that more or less shaped a generation of Nintendo fans, and that's a generation that I have grown routinely annoyed with. As a fan of JRPGs, there's a pretty outspoken crowd in the community that won't ever let you forget that the Mario RPGs, particularly this one, are really good and that you should play them. And I, for one, am a hater-ass bitch, and when people tell me that I would like something, it subconsciously tricks my brain into finding reasons to not engage with that media in a good faith way. A habit that I'm trying to break today. What better way to break this habit than to finally tackle that old RPG that the internet hasn't stopped raving about for the better part of 30 years. And what better time to tackle that RPG than when Nintendo drops a squeaky clean remake for modern consoles. On the outside, always looking in, I could never understand why people liked this game so much, so I sat down and gave it a real good faith effort and tried to figure out why people love it. And now that I've played it, yeah, it's as good as everyone says, who knew? Super Mario RPG starts in a pretty standard Mario way. Mario's fighting Bowser to save the princess, you know the drill. And then a giant cartoon sword stabs into the castle and claims it as property of these all-new villains known as the Smithy gang. And I'm not kidding when I say seeing these silly villain designs was my first sign that this game was going to be something truly special. The sword launches all three of them into new places. Mario goes back to the Mushroom Kingdom to discover that with the princess missing after the sword incident, the Mushroom Kingdom is under attack. And luckily, you bump into a new ally, Mallow. Mallow is a cowardly frog person who is mysteriously not very frog-like in appearance. He helps you take back the Mushroom Kingdom from this sword guy, who upon defeat gives us this star. Skipping through some stuff, we meet Geno, a warrior from the land of the stars inhabiting a children's doll. Geno informs us that this star we found is actually a piece of the Star Road, a mystical wonderland that grants wishes. And with the arrival of the aforementioned giant sword, that road was separated into 7 different star pieces. And this is our mission for the rest of the game. Gather these legendary 7 stars, repair the Star Road, defeat the Smithy gang intruders, and team up with King Bowser and find our missing princess along the way. When you boil down this plot to its simplest elements, it's just kind of our party finding our magic MacGuffins in each new area we visit. There's not too many twists and turns, but it does an outstanding job at giving you an excuse to circle this new version of the Mario universe. And this is a version of the Mario universe that is characterized so strongly that I never wanted to leave. Helping that matter, of course, was the great presentation it had alongside it. I really respect Super Mario RPG's remake for preserving the original game's art style and general feel, taking those building blocks and just making it all look and run so much nicer, as opposed to the from the ground up, built for modern day with new gameplay style of remakes that have been far more popular lately. The original's art style was one where the pixel art really left a lot to the imagination, which gave it this kind of timeless look, and finally being able to render out all of those complex bunches of pixels as full-on 3D models where you can actually make out every detail and have it look just as stylistically interesting as it did back then is an impressive feat. Helped all the more by the fact that these character designs are just fantastic. The Smithy gang in particular feels appropriately out of this world without looking out of place next to Mario. And all the other ancillary characters introduced, like the Nimbus people or all the new variations on the Toads, feel right at home here. So much so that I wish that they were treated as mainstays of the extended Mario canon. I can't stress enough how much I enjoy the visuals of this game. They could have done it like Link's Awakening and make it like a cutesy toy version of the Mario universe. In fact, the condensed Mario, Peach, and Bowser models would have really lended themselves to a change like that, but instead it presents the remade world in a really earnest, straightforward way that I find endlessly charming. And that's not even mentioning that the camera is locked to this old isometric view for most of the game's runtime, with a handful of times like cutscene breaking out of that camera format, really only doing so to achieve something that the original camera quite literally couldn't. Sweeping shots or close-ups on a scene that might have been difficult to express, it is genuinely jaw-droppingly gorgeous at times. And even when the graphics aren't the most technically impressive, the art style and rendering choices more than make up for it. This game has a look that I have become absolutely obsessed with. which is good because the gameplay I found to be hit or miss. Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars popularized the turn-based combat system of action commands, meaning that when you do an attack, you do a fun little QuickTime event or minigame, and if you do it right, you do more damage. And this system enshrouds an otherwise basic SNES-era combat system. If you've played an RPG from this time, you know the feeling. Special attacks that can only be done with a limited resource like magic, in this case flower points, several items like health potions or bombs, and everyone falling into familiar RPG roles. Mario being an all-rounder, Mallow a mage, Geno a glass cannon, Bowser a tank, and Peach a healer. All of them have the stats that they're good at, and when they level up, you can choose which stat to increase. The action commands is really the only thing that makes Mario RPG's core gameplay different, which is good because these are very strong. Perfect timing in attack makes it do just about as much damage as some of your stronger special moves, and perfect timing a block means that you take 0 damage at all. So to balance this system, they make the windows to pull off the perfect timing on these airtight. And these perfect attacks are so strong that even though I was pretty bad at pulling a lot of these off consistently, I still found myself comfortably cruising throughout most of the experience. The game has its more difficult moments. It's surely difficult enough to remain engaging throughout the entire experience, but it's not like interesting challenge as much as it feels like underdeveloped mechanics that bite you in the ass. It's almost like they expected people to get so good at the perfect timings that they balance these encounters by giving every boss in the game 4 or 5 unblockable attacks, and then God forbid you can't pull off the perfect timings in these boss fights, because then you suddenly get triple whammied into the ground without a chance to do anything in response. The difficulty almost felt random for that reason. I'd rocket through bosses with no issues, only for the most random of enemy encounters to show up and wipe the floor with me. Most of these issues can be ignored by the fun to be had when you're still consistently unlocking new attacks and learning their action commands. But at some point you realize that the standard attacks basically do the same amount of damage as the specials, so you begin to save all your flower points for healing. And then, like most RPGs, all of these random battles with opponents you've fought hundreds of times already really start to get old. It's that deflating feeling of realizing you had already seen basically every permutation of the game you're gonna get, and you still have like 8 hours to go. The fights are usually the worst part of an RPG for me already, with a lot of games having a grind that ends up feeling more like filler than anything else. And while all the encounters on the overworld can be avoided, towards the end of the game, they just lock you in place until you do like 20 to 30 fights in a row. And at that point, I was just so burnt out on the game's systems, I began to dread every new fight. But for as much as I did get burnt out on the gameplay, I never got sick of the story that the game led me through. Mario, Peach, and Bowser are characterized as we've known them for decades. Mario is a silent protagonist that is regaled as a hero of the lands, Bowser is as evil as your typical Saturday morning cartoon villain, and Peach is stereotypically feminine, but in a girl boss kind of way, rushing to stand up for herself instead of letting everyone do the work for her. While I liked what they did with these guys here, it's clear that they are not the stars. Most of the interesting scenes with them come from their interactions with the familiar but strange interpretation of the Mushroom Kingdom. This game is so tightly written and comedic that it was an absolute blast to read through all the dialogue, which is an odd sentiment to give to a game that I think has a pretty uninvolved main plot. But the moment-to-moment character interaction was something that I always looked forward to. Each new area providing us with new characters to learn about or some kind of new gameplay gimmick, and before their narrative or comedic functions can get tired, they're out of the picture and we're meeting new people and doing new things. It moves at a breakneck pace that I would probably criticize in your more traditional JRPG. But here, it feels appropriate. And it's not like the game is devoid of your more typical JRPG character development. You see it manifest in our other 2 party members. It's just more understated than you might expect. Mallow discovering what makes him different from the other frog people, as well as striving to be more courageous, gives him a character arc to develop throughout the game. This, alongside him being the one doing a lot of the actual talking to the different NPCs and such, makes him our de facto main character on this journey, which was super weird to discover considering that he's a one-off character built for this game only, and not even the most popular one. A common sentiment I have been seeing online since the remake dropped is that Geno is really boring yet super hyped up in online circles, and that sucks when Mallow, the fully formed character, is right there. And I agree that Mallow should get more attention, but I have to disagree that Gino is boring. Gino's whole arc involves him slowly coming to terms with the fact that when the Star Road is saved, his mission will be over and he'll have to leave this world behind. And while it is pretty simple, I interpreted this plotline as the developers putting forward an allegory for role-playing games altogether. The idea that you're going on a journey in this world with these characters that you've come to love, but when the mission is done, the world is saved, you're done playing the game. And as such, you have to leave your friends behind. It's an in-world vehicle to explore that bittersweet feeling of finally finishing an experience as involved as a role-playing game, and I think that's fun. Something I've come to love about Super Mario RPG is how slightly off-brand the entire experience feels with the rest of the Mario series in context. Either because this game was developed by an outside party in the form of Squaresoft, or because this game came out before too many of the Mario series staples were established, this game and its version of the Mushroom Kingdom feels off, but off in an endearing way. Like, yeah, we have Birdo, we have the Boos, we even have the Kongs, but they're all presented very differently here than they are in other works, which gives this game a very awkward feel at times. It's Mario, but there are so many things here that are distinctly not Mario. And when I came to that conclusion, it all made sense. I finally got why people have been hyping up this old Mario RPG for decades. Think back to Mario Odyssey and all the things that blew people's minds. Whoa, Mario in a big city. Whoa, Mario fighting a Dark Souls dragon. Mario RPG was that for kids born in 1989. And when I made that realization, it made so much sense to me why this game had so much staying power in the wider Nintendo cultural zeitgeist. Year after year of hearing about how people wanted Gino in Super Smash Bros., Bowser constantly being used as this goofy, reluctant ally, the presentation of Mario as the silly, expressive gremlin of a silent protagonist, I finally felt like I got it, you know? And even with the wider context of what Mario has been doing these past couple years, to a first-timer, a lot of that new energy brought by Mario RPG back then still has staying power to this day. Look at the character acting on Mario right here. Look at how much emotion is being conveyed through some pretty standard animations being used in new, interesting ways. This breakdown being showcased through Mario like this is likely in some form one of those side effects of game development on older hardware, having to express complicated scenes without using too many new sprites, but it provides an energy that you don't really get nowadays. This right here, this is passion, this is aura, this is soul. Super Mario RPG has a soul that the remake captures excellently. Super Mario RPG is one of the most playable video games I have ever had the joy of touching. It's so easy to get into, rockets through its story with strong pacing, never letting a dull moment sit, and its turn-based combat is always keeping players directly involved in the action. People who don't like RPGs always say stuff like they don't like long, self-involved stories or boring turn-based combat, and watching this game swiftly dodge falling into any of these typical RPG pain points is truly a sight to behold. So much so that it feels like this game was made with the express mission of getting non-RPG fans to enjoy an RPG. And I think that's super cool. It's no wonder that this game has developed such a reputation in online RPG circles. It's like the video game equivalent of a kind stranger grabbing your hand and giving you a tour in a strange, unfamiliar land. It's a journey that I think a lot of gamers needed to take back in the 90s with role-playing games dominating the scene, and with the remake, it's a journey that's still important even right now. Contextualized by a lot of online debate about 2023 Game of the Year favorite Baldur's Gate 3 and how so many players seem to really not want to give turn-based combat a fair shake, Mario RPG reaches across the aisle and offers to tell you all about why this game format is super cool, all without making you leave your comfort zone. I opened this video talking about why I was so hesitant to play a title that everyone kept recommending me. And it turns out that that game was fundamentally designed to get people to try a new thing. And that right there, folks, that's destiny. And keeping in line with what we've been talking about, for today's video, I'm actually leaving you guys with some homework. Before the end of the year, play one of those games that someone in your orbit won't shut up about, and really try to see why they like it. Take a chance on something new, because you never know what you're going to find. See ya!